On today's show, the Houston Rockets NBA Cup dreams cut short as they fall to the OKC Thunder. The defense was superb. The offense was not. Continues to be an issue for the Rockets this season. They left way too many points on the table against the Thunder. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No NBA Cup trophy or banner for the Houston Rockets this season as they fall to the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Cup Semifinals, 111-96. What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Give me your thoughts from this game. What was the most frustrating part of this game? What are you proud of with this Houston Rockets team? What was the best moment from this, worst moment from this game maybe? Or just say go Rockets. It helps us out a ton. Also subscribe to our new daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate that. We've got a lot to get into breaking down this Rockets loss to the OKC Thunder, 111-96. Rockets leaving a lot of points on the table. Way too many missed opportunities in this game for Houston. And of course, want to thank you for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being one of our amazing everydayers. Oh man, where to start with this game? First off, I just want to say from the jump how much fun it is. Look, it's a loss, so it sucks, but just how much fun it is to be so emotionally, mentally, physically, even like, you know, pumping your fist, cheering, whatever, invested in high stakes, high leverage basketball, right? This is the biggest game that the Rockets have played literally since the James Harden era, right? Since the Rockets faced the Lakers in the second round of the playoffs in the Disney bubble, this is the biggest basketball game that we've seen this Houston Rockets team play. And just like against the Golden State Warriors, they fought incredibly hard. They showed a lot of tenacity, and it was a heavyweight matchup, man. The NBA's two best defenses going head to head. I mean, it was a 42-41 game at halftime. Like the score, it was a first quarter score at a halftime between these two teams. Now, some of that was just lack of shot making on both sides, but a lot of it was also the defense. Like this was a like juggernaut heavyweight matchup of elite defensive teams going at each other head to head. And it was so much fun to watch. So just as a fan of the game, like I appreciated this game so much. And it's so much it's such a great experience for the young guys to play in these high leverage moments. And yes, it's a loss, but there are so many lessons that the Rockets can learn from this loss. And we're going to unpack those in the coming days too, and figure out what this team can take away from this experience against the OKC Thunder and how they can hopefully apply it down the line to any potential playoff or postseason berth that this team is, you know, aspiring towards as the season progresses. But at the end of the day, the Rockets did lose, and the reasons that they lost against a team, and look, hat tip too to the Thunder. Like as hard as the Rockets fought, as well as they did play, especially on the defensive end this game until things started to unravel in the second half, they were always kind of in this game. You know, the final score betrays how the game actually felt, you know, 15-point loss. Rockets were, even in the second half when OKC took control of this game, the Rockets were well within, you know, a couple possessions most of the time. I mean, you know, it was a 6-point lead going into the fourth quarter. OKC kind of held like a 7 to 9, 10-point lead for most of that quarter. Rockets cut it to 5 at one point. And that's the thing is that this is an OKC Thunder team that, yes, they're not at full strength. They don't have Chet Holmgren, and he's obviously a massive part of what they're doing or what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve this season. But This is an OKC Thunder team that is, are the favorites to make it out of the Western Conference, are, have legitimate title aspirations this season. They have an MVP candidate in SGA. They're one of the deepest teams in the association, one of the best coaches in the league in Mark Daignault. Hat tip to the Thunder. This is not an easy opponent to beat. And the Rockets made them work for this win. It was not a blowout. It was not an easy dub for the Thunder. They had to work their asses off to win this game against this Rockets squad. And the Rockets were very much in this game. They were. But they left so many points on the table, so many missed opportunities, so many moments of just poor game plan discipline, which can't happen against an opponent like the OKC Thunder. Right? When the margin for error is that razor thin, you cannot keep shooting yourself in the foot. And I think that's my biggest takeaway from this game. Looking like, and we'll dive into the specifics here. First and foremost, the Rockets, not once, not twice, but 3 times sent 3-point shooters for OKC to the free throw line. Now, the first 2 were courtesy of Tari, Eason, and those were bad fouls. The third one was Dillon Brooks fouling SGA from beyond the 3-point line. And that one may have, probably not a great call. But, can't change the outcome of the whistle. Foul's a foul. And so the Rockets literally gift wrapped OKC 9 of their 32 free throws. So, and OKC capitalized on those free throw opportunities. They shot 28 of 32 from the charity stripe, 87.5%. They took care of business at the free throw line. They finished a plus 13 at the charity stripe. So if the Rockets hadn't gifted them 9 trips to the free throw line on those 3 3-point shooting fouls, they would have only had 23 free throw attempts, right? So that's important to consider. Rockets, meanwhile, they had 25 trips to the line. They only hit 15 of them. 60% free throw shooting is not going to cut it. They left 10 points on the table against a very good OKC team. You can't do that. Just can't happen. So not only did you give OKC a bunch of freebies, you didn't capitalize on the ones that you had. So that's one area to look at here in this game. Another area that really stood out was the turnovers. The Rockets have been one of the best teams in the NBA this season at taking care of the basketball. And in this game, they had 16 turnovers. They did not do a good job taking care of the basketball this game. In particular, Alperen Sengun had some brutal turnovers. Amen Thompson had a bunch of turnovers trying to make moves. Even though he was the Rockets' most efficient offensive player in this game, he had a bunch of drives where he either just got poke checked and lost the ball as he was making his move, or he had a charge at one point where he just predetermined where he was going to go, and defender guessed right and got in his way. And maybe you say, okay, he was still sliding a little bit, but Amen also kind of dropped the shoulder. So we see those moments where if you drop the shoulder and if you really bowl over a player, it doesn't matter if he was moving or not. An offensive foul is an offensive foul. You can't just truck through a guy. Those moments can't happen, right? Against a Thunder team that, to be fair, even though the Rockets turned it over 16 times, they only allowed 13 points off of those 16 turnovers. So it's not like the Thunder were turning the ball over and then getting out and running and transitioning and getting a bunch of freebies that way. The Rockets still did a really good job of limiting the Thunder's transition opportunities, holding them to just 10 fast break points in this game. So credit to the Rockets there. But turnovers were an issue, right? Not taking care of the basketball was a problem. And here's the biggest one. And this is going to continue to be an issue for this Rockets team. Lack of outside shooting. And you could just as simply look at Jalen Green, 1 of 8 shooting. Fred VanVleet, 1 of 11, didn't hit his only 3 until there was 2 minutes left in the game. Just unacceptable shooting from your 2 starting backcourt guards. But even worse than that, we'll dive into the numbers here specifically. The Rockets, and this is going by NBA.com tracking data, the Rockets generated 19 quote-unquote open three-pointers in this game. That means a defender anywhere from 4 to 6 feet away from you, right? So an open three-pointer. They generated 19 of them. They only hit 26.3%. They hit 5 of the 19 for 26.3%. Then on wide open threes in this game, the Rockets generated 20 wide open three-pointers in this game. That means there's not a defender within 6 feet of you. The closest defender, 6+ feet away. 20 wide open threes. They only hit 6 of them. for 30% shooting. That's just not going to get it done. The Rockets offense at times does generate good, wide open, quality looks for its players. Guys just need to hit shots. And I hate it when it comes down to that. I hate it when the answer is literally just, you've got to hit shots. But the name of the game is basketball. You have to be able to put the ball in the basket in order to win basketball games. The Rockets defense is superb. They're the number 2 defense in the NBA, going up against the number 1 defense in the NBA. And their defense is good enough to win them games, even when their offense is ugly, like it was in this one. And we've seen them win a lot of games this season when the offense has been this bad, or if not even worse than it was in this game. And their defense is good enough to keep them in a game, even when the offense is this bad. But in order to start winning some of these games, in order to win against the upper echelon opponents in the NBA, like the OKC Thunder, like the Boston Celtics, like the Cleveland Cavaliers, like the Dallas Mavericks, whatever, the Rockets are going to have to find ways to put points on the board. They're going to have to find reliable means of executing offense down the stretch. They're going to have to find shooters. They're going to have to get guys who can consistently knock down shots. And until they do, the Rockets are going to have losses like this that feel painful because their defense was more than good enough to help them win this game. That's the brutal reality of it. The Rockets have some serious holes and some serious question marks offensively that they need to address. Will they do it at this trade deadline? Will they power through the rest of the season and rely on their defense and revisit the conversation in the offseason? TBD. We'll see. But that's the issue with this Rockets team, and that's going to continue to be an issue all season long. Coming up, want to discuss some of the specific offensive struggles for the Rockets, namely the lack of production from the backcourt duo of Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, plus the star factor on both sides, SGA for the Thunder versus Alperen Sengun for the Rockets. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. You don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.25% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on IRA account contributions. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Today's episode is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Look, how do you stay cozy during the winter months where it's a little bit colder outside? For some people, it's about wrapping up with a blanket and a mug of hot chocolate, or maybe watching your favorite movie with your family and friends. That's the best way to spend the month of December. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some of that comfort that never truly goes away, even when the seasons ultimately change. I'm somebody that's done therapy in the past. I found it to be an incredibly cathartic experience to have an unbiased professional third party walk me through some of the day-to-day stuff that I was struggling with. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Houston Rockets offense here in this one, because while I highlighted the issues, the points left on the table by the Rockets there in segment one, I think it's part of a larger, dilemma here for the Rockets, and that is just the fact that the guard play by the Rockets is not good enough at this point, and it's been a consistent issue throughout this season. The overall performances by Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green have been holding this team back at times. Now, there's also games where Jalen pops off and looks awesome, albeit a lot of those games so far this season have happened against inferior opponents, and that's just facts. You can go look at the schedule and go look at the teams where Jalen tends to have better games. It tends to happen against worse teams. And then there have been some really major games where Fred has monster nights where he's had games where he takes over in the third quarter or pops off in the first quarter and gets the Rockets off to a really great start. But he's kind of like a bursty player, right? Where he'll have these big, bursts of scoring where he can't miss and he's on fire from three. But then he has performances like this one where he goes 1 of 11 from downtown and he's just this unreliable outside 3-point shooter that's literally almost shooting you out of a game. And at the end of the day, for the Houston Rockets, when they have both of their starting backcourt guards struggling to score the basketball, when they combine to go 8 for 29, 20 points on 8 of 29 shooting for Fred and Jalen combined, only 2 of 19 from downtown, you're just not going to be able to win basketball games, like flat out. Alperen Sengun needs to be better, too, around the rim. Absolutely. Like, he can't miss the shots. He can't miss the bunnies that he's missed around the rim, and I should have included that in the missed opportunities portion when I talked about it in segment 1, because Alp's inefficiency around the rim continues to be an issue so far this season. But Alp has, by and large, been a lot more consistent than Fred and Jalen throughout this season. And when the guard play for the Rockets is this bad, I don't know what else the team can do. They need a serious upgrade at one, if not both, of the guard positions to be able to be truly taken seriously down the line. Now, obviously, the internal hope from the Rockets organization is that Jalen will figure it out at some point. We've seen the flashes. We've seen what he can look like when he has it going, but then you get games like this where he just frankly doesn't have it going, right? And he really struggles against good defensive teams. He struggles against teams with great point of attack defenders. He really struggled to get downhill in this game and, generate any offense. He only had 1 trip to the free throw line. And when the outside shot's not falling, there's just very few ways in which Jalen is able to impact the game if he's not scoring the basketball. He's become a better defender. He's become a little bit of a better decision maker at times, facilitating, finding his teammates, the drive and kick game and whatnot. But that wasn't very much on display in this one. And then same goes for Fred VanVleet. Fred is a very limited player in his role. He provides what the Rockets needed last year, and even to this point still need that calming influence on the floor, a guy who's not going to turn the basketball over, which to his credit, he didn't in this game. He had 7 assists, only 1 turnover. But outside of that, if Fred is not hitting his outside shots, he's not giving you much else offensively, especially against good defensive teams. Sometimes against bad defensive teams, Fred is able to get downhill a little bit. He's able to, put the brakes on and use some craftiness around the basket and in the painted area and, get some shots at the rim, which he wasn't really able to do much, if at all, last season. So that was kind of a welcome surprise, a welcome development in his game as this season has progressed. But against the better, more competent defenses, Fred becomes a kind of one-dimensional player again, where it's literally knock down your threes, and that's really the only shots he's getting within the flow of the offense. Maybe occasionally, if there's a defensive miscommunication or a breakdown, he'll be able to get all the way to the rim and score a layup. But Fred is not a downhill threat. He's just not. And when your 2 guards are not getting downhill consistently, collapsing the defense, and then they're also not hitting from the perimeter, it makes it really hard to get anything going offensively. And then it's kind of this major domino effect where on top of those guys struggling, then all the onus gets put on Alperen Sengun for him to try and generate some offense. And ultimately, for a team like the Thunder who love to pack the paint defensively and send 2 to the ball and force him to make a quick decision when he's trying to get to his spots, it crowds the paint for him, right? If the Rockets had reliable shooters around Alperen Sengun, he would get to work one-on-one quite a bit more often. Or he would get to kick the ball back out to wide open shooters who would then knock down shots, and he would be feasting and racking up anywhere from 7, 8, 9, 10 assists a night. But right now, it's literally the worst of both worlds, where the Rockets do not have good, consistent outside shooters. And so then defenses are able to pack the paint and really collapse on top of Alperen Sengun. So he's got, sometimes 2 and 3 bodies swarming around him as he's making his move in the paint. And he's, largely making these moves against a very quality defender in Isaiah Hartenstein. Now, there were still plenty of opportunities for Alperen Sengun in this game. Shots that he should have hit, like little floaters that just came up short, or, missed layups right at the rim, just different shots that he's made historically throughout his career. And that continues to be the most frustrating part of Alperen Sengun's season, is his inability to hit the easy shots that he's getting. But outside of that, I mean, this Houston Rockets offense, as vanilla as it is, has done a decent enough job still managing to create some good offense outside of how predictable it is, outside of how kind of one-dimensional some of its players have been this season. And a big part of that has been Alperen Sengun and the attention that he ultimately draws offensively. When he sets a screen, when he opens up the guard, when he then starts rolling to the rim, when he gets the ball in the middle of the floor and starts making decisions there, he's able to collapse the defense, right? And the Rockets are able to find the open man, swing the basketball around, and generate some wide open shots that way. They're just not able to hit anything right now. If you could pair, and this is why, to me, the recipe for success for this Rockets team is so readily apparent. And it really is. When you see the games where Jalen pops off, where Fred pops off, where one of those two guys look like an all-star guard, and then Alperen Sengun plays the way that he normally is able to play, and part of Sengun being able to play the way he normally plays is a little bit dependent on having the dynamic scoring threat of a perimeter guard to help remove some of the defensive focus on him, right? Because if the defense has to worry about another premier scoring option, if the defense has to worry about Jalen scoring or Fred scoring, then it does make life a little bit easier for Alperen Sengun, and the defense is unable to hone in as much on him as they have been, or as they were able to in this game in particular. The recipe for success is right there. When one of those two, Fred or Jalen, plays like an all-star guard, the Rockets look incredible. They really do. Because then you have a premier dynamic all-star guard on the perimeter. You have Alperen Sengun complementing the all-star guard in the middle. You have the elite role players in Dillon Brooks and Jabari Smith Jr., who are very much on a nightly basis absolutely doing their job. I want to give credit to those two guys who have been such consistent forces for this Rockets team. Dillon in this game, he finished 4 of 13 shooting from downtown, but at one point he was 4 of 8 before he really started kind of chucking to like wrap up the game. And you could chalk that up to maybe a little bit of exhaustion. You can chalk it up to desperation with the Rockets just trying to find any semblance of offense. But, the box score doesn't do it justice how good Dillon was in this game. And same for Jabari. 14 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block. Only 3 of 8 shooting. He was 2 of 4 from downtown. And he was also 6 of 7 at the free throw line. Like, I really thought Jabari should have gotten a lot more opportunities offensively. And that's kind of the other thing, is when so many of your 3-point attempts go to your 2 guards and neither of them are hitting, like at some point you have to find a way to diversify the offense. At some point, Fred has to stop pulling the trigger on the 3 ball and he has to try and get other guys involved. At some point, Fred has to make a call and run a play for Jabari, run a play for somebody else, run a play to get anybody else some looks from 3. Hell, even Aaron Holiday, who's the Rockets' best 3-point shooter on the team, he only got 1 attempt in his 5 minutes off the bench, but in those 5 minutes, I feel like he could have gotten 2 or 3 or even 4 3-point attempts, because the Rockets needed guys who could hit shots, and the guys who were struggling in this game just continued to struggle. And I understand the mentality you have to have as a shooter. You have to believe the next one is going to go in. You have to have, what's it called? The conscience, or a shooter's conscience, or whatever it is, where you just gotta, you can't think about the last shot. You can't think about missing the last 2, 3, 5, whatever. But seriously, at some point, then maybe it's up to Ime, right? Maybe it's up to Udoka to say, all right, Fred, stop shooting, right? Once you're 0 of 5, 0 of 7, whatever it is, get other guys involved. There's got to be something else that the Rockets can turn to, adjust to, whatever, to try and generate some offense. But, I think some of Dillon's last, 4 or 5 threes were desperation threes more than anything for the Rockets to try and just get something going offensively in this game. I do want to highlight here the defense, which was sensational. And even though the Rockets did have their lapses at times, and even though SGA wound up putting up 32 points, so many of those came at the free throw line. And again, he was gift wrapped 6 of those 15 free throws. But the Rockets made SGA work. Man, he looked exhausted by the end of the first half with how hard he had to work for everything in that first half. And the Rockets really did a fantastic job. Again, a season low 18 points in the first quarter for OKC, only 41 points at halftime. They opened things up in the second half, and a big part of that was ultimately the three-point shooting for the Thunder. In the first half of this game, the Thunder only shot 2 of 18 from downtown, and the Thunder had some wide open threes that they were definitely missing as well. J-Dub was 0 of 3. SGA was 0 of 4 from downtown. Alex Caruso 0 of 2. Like Lou Dort was 1 of 5 from downtown, and some of that was the Rockets' defensive scheme was really aggressive on SGA. They were sending 2 to the ball and forcing him to get rid of the basketball on the perimeter. They really were extending their defense all the way out and allowing, or trying to force OKC to beat them 4-on-3 without letting SGA do the work. And for the most part, it really worked in that first half. And then in the second half, that's when the Thunder's three-point shooting regressed to the mean in a really aggressive fashion, where the Thunder, again, they were 2 of, 18 in the first half. And then in the second half, they went 9 of 12. So the Thunder definitely hitting a lot of threes. Lou Dort went 4 of 4 in the second half. J-Dub 2 of 2. SGA 2 of 2. Cason Wallace finally hit one. That was one of the most painful regress to the mean type halves of basketball that I saw, where the Rockets did do a great job defensively against the Thunder in the first half, but a big part of them kind of coming back to life in the second half was generating good looks. They did generate some good looks in the first half, but the role players just stepping up and hitting the shots that they were getting courtesy of the Houston Rockets defensive scheme at the end of the day. Coming up, I want to talk about some of the individual performances, talk about the difference in star power on both sides, SGA for the Thunder, Alperen Sengun for the Rockets, as well as final thoughts from this one. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. Just go to FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, take a look at all the different odds available. Check out their parlay builder. Check out the different season awards favorites, or just the favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Bills plus 420, the Lions right behind them at plus 450, the Eagles in third place at plus 500, and then rounding out the top 5, you have the Chiefs at plus 600 and the Ravens plus 800. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, so kind of talked about this a little bit already throughout the first couple segments, and just in particular last segment, right, talking about some of the Rockets' offensive struggles, their inefficiencies at times. But a big part of this game, to me, also kind of boiled down to just star players making things happen or not making things happen. And as good as Alperen Sengun has been for the Houston Rockets this season, as much as he is the closest the Houston Rockets have to a legitimate star player right now, and look, LP this year is playing like a bona fide all-star. He is. Alpe's numbers are all-star adjacent, and with the Rockets' record where it's at, I think there's no question about it. Alperen Sengun should and hopefully will be named to an all-star team this season, assuming the Rockets stay competitive and stay at the top of the conference and his numbers hold up. And in fact, if his shooting around the rim picks up a little bit and gets back to where it's been previously in his career, then, he should be an absolute lock for it. And he'd potentially be even in, the, MVP conversation somewhere, top 10 MVP voting, whatever. But you look on the other side of the aisle, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is just on another level of star power. He is. SGA is one of the top 5, top 3 best players in the NBA right now at this very moment. And that was very much on display in this game. And I want to point out a statistic here. At one point, both Alperen Sengun and SGA were 2 of 10 shooting from the floor. So at one point in this game, SGA was 2 of 10 shooting. He finished 8 of 21, which means over those next 11 shots, he went 6 for 11. So despite the rough start, he figured it out. He figured out the Rockets defense, and he got himself going. He also put up, again, a ton of points at the free throw line, 14 of 15 shooting at the charity stripe, on his way to 32 points. Star players figure out a way to get it done. Whether it's, adjusting from first half to second half, whether it's finding a way to manipulate the defense, even if it's just literally finding a way to manufacture points at the free throw line. Now, granted, again, 6 of those 15 free throws for SGA were gift wrapped by the Houston Rockets. But still, even getting to the free throw line 9 times is a completely game-changing number of free throws for an individual player, for a team, what have you. Alperen Sengun in this game, 13 points, 6 of 16 shooting. So Alp at one point was 2 of 10 shooting, and then that means over his next 6 shots to round out the game, he went 4 of 6. And that's good. That's impressive, right? He had the slow start. He started to come on a little bit later in the game. He hit his next 4 out of his next 6 shots. That's good, but he only had 13 points, and he only got to the free throw line 1 time. And he missed the 1 free throw that he got. He hit a 3-pointer. But in a game like this, right, as ugly and as grinded out as this game was, it would have been great for the Rockets to, and this is in part Alperen Sengun's fault with, the inability to finish around the rim, the slow starts, what have you. But it's also an issue with the Rockets' offensive hierarchy. And I guess we're just going to keep talking about the Rockets' offense at this point, because that's kind of the big story here. Within the Rockets' offensive hierarchy, the evenly distributed shot profile across the board is problematic at times. You look at OKC, 21 shots for SGA, 15 free throw attempts. He's clearly their best player and their number 1 option. Their second best player, J-Dub, 20 shots. Right? That's how it's supposed to be. And then for the rest of their starters, 12 for Isaiah Hartenstein, 11 for Dort, 6 for Cason Wallace, and then a smattering of shots, for the guys coming off the bench. For the Rockets, it's way more evenly distributed, and that's the frustrating thing, where you have Dillon Brooks, who attempted 17 shots, so he had 1 more shot than Alpe. Fred VanVleet, who had 15 shots, only 1 less than Alperen Sengun. Jalen Green, 14 shots, 2 less than Alpe. Amen Thompson off the bench, 15 shots. And so, even though Alpe had the rough start and the slow start, because there's not a true offensive hierarchy for the Rockets, he wasn't really afforded the opportunity to continue building on what looked like him clearly kind of shaking off a little bit of that rust and starting to make some shots down the line. The Rockets' little, equal opportunity offense that they have, what have you, it's good at times, and it has its benefits and it has its merits for sure, but they also really need to figure out a better system than just, okay, Sengun's going to get a shot, then Fred, then Jalen, then Dillon, then Jabari, then back to Sengun, because I feel like it makes it really hard for anybody to really truly catch a rhythm. And I think that was a little bit of something that we saw on display in this game, where if some of those 3-point attempts that had gone to VanVleet and Jalen, if those had been first off reduced and maybe gone, some more attempts for Jabari, I think was option number one. But another option here is just let Alp go to work a little bit more, right? Some of that is by design, though, because if the Thunder force the ball out of Alp's hands, if they collapse, if they send a double team to him, then he has to be able to kick it out to shooters, and those shooters have to take those shots. But at the same time, if the Rockets had better shooters on the perimeter, and if the OKC defense wasn't as willing to give up those outside shots, then Alp would be afforded and given the opportunity to go to work a little bit more one-on-one, and he could rack up, 20, 25 shot attempts a game, and we could see him, granted, again, slow start, 2 of 10 shooting, we could see him shake off that rust and kind of close out a game like how we saw him do against the Minnesota Timberwolves, like how we saw him do against the 76ers, those games where he does show up in a big way late in the game. And that's what you want your star player to ultimately be able to do. And even in the second half of this game, I was talking about him being 2 of 10 shooting across his first 10 shots. He was 5 of 9 in the second half. He hit a 3-pointer. He had 5 boards. He had an assist. He had 11 of his 13 points all in the second half. Like, I think there's something there. There's clearly a gap between where SGA is as a star and where Alperen Sengun is. And Sengun is still incredibly young. He's got plenty of time to grow and get better. And from what we've seen from him, right, and how much more evolved his game has become this season, how much more effective he is on the defensive side, all of those are really encouraging signs. But that's also the difference between having a tier 1 superstar versus an all-star as your best player. And I'm not putting any limitations on Alperen Sengun. He may well become the NBA's next superstar, right? He's incredibly talented, he's hardworking, and he's continued to impress year after year, coming back, adding more to his game. The biggest thing he added to his game this past season was the defensive impact, right? And so, the next thing he needs to add is he needs to work on the shooting. He needs to work on, needs to get back to finishing better around the basket, those different things, figuring out how to, work through double teams and how to continue to make the right reads for his teammates. But, it's a twofold problem, because it's part, Alp needs to find ways to manufacture points when he can't get his offense going, which means getting to the free throw line. But it's also his teammates need to be able to knock down outside shots when the double teams are being sent his way, as the OKC Thunder were able to do for SGA. Again, big differences there. SGA 15 free throws to just 1 by Alperen Sengun. And then the Thunder as a team wound up, collectively shooting the ball a lot better than the Rockets ultimately did. Especially there in the second half. So even when the Rockets were sending double teams at the Thunder star player, they were knocking down shots. And then when double teams were being sent to the Rockets star player in Alperen Sengun, the Rockets were not knocking down shots. Simple as that. Do want to give some credit here to Amen Thompson off the Rockets bench, who did lead the way for Houston with 19 points on 9 of 15 shooting, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 steals. Talked about the turnovers earlier. That was a little bit problematic, but just his ability to, get downhill, finish around the rim, and just provide a different dynamic for this Rockets team, out of their guard play. Because Amen Thompson brings something to the table that neither Jalen Green or Fred VanVleet really bring. He's such a unique piece on the floor for the Rockets. Not only that, he's an incredible, he's an incredible defensive force, obviously. And that is another layer of what he brings to the table. But offensively, he's just a very different dynamic player than Fred and Jalen. And I feel like he plays incredibly well off of Alperen Sengun. His ability to cut, his ability to play around the basket, whether it's out of the dunker spot or cutting in from the baseline. He provides a unique release valve for Alp and for the rest of the Rockets offense, really, that isn't a kick out to a 3-point shooter. And that's really important. And I probably could have talked about this and should have talked about this last segment, talking about the offensive issues and the lack of production from Jalen and Fred. But it just feels like Jalen and Fred do not complement each other very well, if at all. Again, it takes one of them playing well for the Rockets to play their best brand of basketball. When Fred has it going, when Jalen has it going, they look like a really strong, competent team, because then you pair that with Sengun, yada, yada, yada. It looks really good. But it's also problematic that their styles don't really mesh. And I think the hope really was that, and we saw this, and it was abundantly clear, the vision last season, where if Jalen could take on more of the lead ball handler responsibilities and be more in charge of running the offense and initiating sets and being the lead handler and getting downhill and running the two-man game with Alperen Sengun, then Fred would be able to transition into more of an off-ball role and be able to play that spot-up shooter role, help space the floor, not have nearly as much pressure to initiate the offense and get downhill and collapse the defense and do things that he's not necessarily super-duper equipped to do. But unfortunately, we haven't seen Jalen take that leap. We haven't seen Jalen's ability to really quarterback the Rockets offense. He struggles with ball pressure, struggles making the right reads at times. There's simple reads that sometimes he's not able to make, and then sometimes he makes really good reads, right? But it's inconsistent is the problem. And I understand Ime Udoka's aversion to going away from Fred when Fred provides a level of stability and, wow, voice crack. When Fred provides a level of stability that this Rockets team desperately needs, especially in the half court. And Fred also provides, a consistent feed to Alperen Sengun. Fred and Alpe's two-man game is great. Now, part of that might be because Jalen and Alpe haven't been afforded as much time to nurture their two-man game together, but we've also started seeing Ime swap up his rotation patterns to where he's coming back at the end of the first quarter, top of the second quarter with Jalen and Alperen Sengun, and those two guys are now playing together in the bench units for the Rockets. So Jalen is now getting run with Alpe in the second unit for the Rockets, and it still hasn't looked great. I don't know what else to say other than, again, the Rockets internally are just hoping that Jalen can figure it out and turn things around, because they need a premier guard to really unlock this team. And some nights it can be Fred, some nights it's Jalen, but when neither of them can show up, and again, when their skill sets do not complement each other, Jalen looks way better with Amen Thompson out there, because that's a running mate. They can run the floor, they get a defensive stop, they're in transition, and it looks great. And then Fred can look great with Amen, because Fred can run the show, and Amen can be in the dunker spot or in the corner and cutting in and cleaning up the offensive glass and, backdoor cuts and all the off-ball movement that he provides, or operating as a screener and then playing out of the short roll in the middle of the floor with Sengun in the dunker spot. There's different dynamics where Jalen and Amen, awesome. Fred and Amen, great. Jalen and Fred, it kind of sucks. It's not great. They do not complement each other as a backcourt. And the more that the Rockets keep trying to force that backcourt pairing to work, the more frustrating it's going to become. And at this point, Jalen hasn't done enough to earn the benefit of the doubt for the Rockets to move on from Fred or reduce Fred's role and allow Jalen, more of a runway to run the show. Just hasn't happened yet, right? And so that's, I think, another big issue, and part of the argument here is of why the Rockets offense looks the way that it does, is the struggles that those two face, and again, the fact that they aren't very complementary of each other at the end of the day. So I wanted to share those thoughts, make sure got those out. Also, I hope Steven Adams is okay. He had some good minutes in this game, only played 6 minutes, grabbed 6 rebounds in 6 minutes, 3 of them on the offensive glass. Had 4 points, got to the free throw line 4 times, hit half of them. But he went back to the locker room, and we never got an update on what was going on with Steven Adams. So hopefully he's okay. He's had a few games now where he's looked pretty solid for the Rockets. So hopefully that strong play continues for him. But yeah, this was a unfortunate loss, but a hard-fought battle by the Rockets. I'm very curious your thoughts on this team and how you feel about this team after seeing them go up against the Thunder, a team that has title aspirations this season. Do you feel better or worse about the Rockets' chances in a 7-game series after seeing how this game played out in particular? I think it was a great learning experience for this Rockets team, and this will be something that they definitely look back on. This game, the Warriors game in the quarterfinals, these will be valuable tools, things, film that they can review when they do get to the playoffs down the line. And, they're in that type of atmosphere once again this postseason. So I'm happy the Rockets got the opportunity. Disappointed that they didn't achieve what they set out to with winning the whole thing and winning the cup. But it was an exciting game. It was a hard-fought battle. And again, I couldn't be more proud of this group of guys. And, they're building something really special here. The defense is legit. The offense has issues, but those issues, there's a variety of ways that they can address them, and it's just TBD on whether they address them mid-season this year or if they wait until next offseason to figure it out. But that's going to do it for today's show. Remember, the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop a comment while you're there. Subscribe to the daily Locked on Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.